Hello guys, and welcome to this Volkswizard video. Now, some of you may have already seen the video where I collected Project R8 from Scotland, and you may have even seen the one where I introduce it to the channel and talk about my plans for it. Well, today we're going to get the project started by having a good look around it. We're going to do what I did when I bought it and have a good walk around, just take in all the paintwork and the interior, wheels, brakes, all the bits you can see under the boot, under the bonnet, got that the right way around. And I'll just pass on the experience I've got from buying and selling these cars for the last 16 years. And hopefully if you're going to buy a car, whether it's privately or from a dealer, you can benefit from my experience and go buy yourself a good one. It doesn't have to be an R8, any car will benefit from this advice. So without any further ado, let's have a good look around Project R8. Okay guys, let's get started by having a walk around Project R8. Now let's start at the front. So we want to see a few chips because however careful you are, they are unavoidable. So if you've got a car with 21,000 miles on the clock like this one and there are no chips, you need to be a little bit suspicious. So we've got a couple there, one there, not excessive, about right for a carefully used car with this mileage, so I'm quite happy with that. The bumper is a different story though, because it's been repainted at some point, probably when it was sold to the second owner by Audi. It looks like it's been smart repaired because the lacquer hasn't adhered to the base coat very well, so when it's been chipped it's coming off in big flakes, and even chips are bigger than you'd expect, so that's not very nice. But it's not the end of the world as long as it's just a cosmetic repair and it's not indicative of the car being in an accident, then that's perfectly fine. The bonnet to me looks original, but we'll have a look underneath it in a sec, but it's not the end of the world because painting that bumper will be the same cost as an A1, so it's no reason to not buy this car, but maybe we can find some more. Original number plates are always a good sign as well. This looks slightly old. I mean, it's been on the car for 4 years, so that looks right, and it's not too battered or chipped. So that's a good sign as well. In fact, that was the reason, well, that was part of the reason why I decided to fly up to Scotland and see the car originally, because of the original number plates. Windscreens are always worth checking because sometimes you can't see chips very clearly, so have a conscious look. This one's got the aerial in it for the presumably the sat nav and the radio, so yeah, have a good look at that. While you're up here, feel the edge at the back of the bonnets, because apart from being damaged by wiper arms, it's also a good clue as to whether the paint's original, because the edge should be as smooth as the top, but when bonnets have been painted that edge can be quite rough. Now because the R8 has aluminium panels, when they first built them, the first few, I don't know how many years are affected, but the first few production years at least were very vulnerable to every chip turning into a little spider of corrosion under the paint. Audi painted a lot of them under warranty, but it will never be as good as a factory job. So if you see a car that's been heavily painted, you really need to just have proof that that's been done as a warranty job by Audi. They do a reasonably good job, but never be as good as the high quality work that happens in the factory, particularly with the R8, which is a flagship car. So yeah, have a good look. White can be a hard car to inspect on a sunny day because it just washes out. So a day like today is perfect when there's a little bit of contrast. If you're buying an R8 or a 911 where you've got bits that stick out, then just check them for chipping. That can be really indicative of how the car's been used. There are lots of 911s where they flare out here, and this bit can be particularly battered, and to paint that is really bad, really expensive. Panel gaps are always good. I've checked a few R8s and they always seem to have quite a big gap down here, so this is pretty normal, but they should be pretty consistent. Feeling how the door closes as well, just to make sure it hasn't dropped. On normal cars where this is the quarter panel, so you get the panel all the way from the rear light coming into here, this area is always a really good clue to check, because if it's been painted around here, the paint will stop and you'll have an edge. It's really hard to show you on this car because you've got the blade cutting off the quarter panel from this area, but yeah, on a lot of cars, whether it's 5 doors or 3 doors, just check where the rearmost door shut is and just feel for paint there, look for lines. Yeah, not easy to tell on an R8 because we haven't got that panel here, but on every car you've got usually stickers in the door shuts, so just feel around those, make sure they haven't been painted around. Because I did see a 911 4S convertible once where that had been painted around. It was pretty hideous, to be honest. And don't forget to check the sills, because on a low car like this they can get damaged, as is the case here. I'm not in a rush to get this repaired, it's only plastic. So they've actually thought about how vulnerable they are by making them plastic. But on cars like TTs and new Beetles in particular, the sills are actually metal, and a lot of them get bashed by people jacking them up or people driving over curbs, so definitely worth checking. Obviously check every wheel arch for corrosion. You just never know on a car. If it's been repaired, they'll start to blister, and it might not be immediately obvious. Sometimes that can take feeling and looking at the same time. While you're down here, have a look at the brakes. Make sure they're not overly corroded. See if there's a bit of pad. These are a bit corroded, but I think they'll clean up with a bit of use, and this bell bit that's made of aluminium will clean up nicely. Wheels, well, these are machine polished, so diamond cut, so you're going to get corrosion, and I'm going to change the colour anyway. So as long as they look straight, there's no chunks missing out of them, no visible buckling to the outer edge, you can't check the inner, then that should be fine. It's only a wheel refurb. Again, it costs the same to refurb a wheel on an R8 as it does on an A1, so yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Yeah, I forgot to say, check the headlights. Check they work as well, but check for any excessive damage or cracks that might not be immediately obvious. And also check, if you're buying an R8, check the fuel filler works, because there seems to be a problem with these. And what happens is this pin that retracts when you press the button, I will show you. I think it loses its effectiveness and doesn't go far back enough. So it just seems a bit of a coincidence that Paul Wallace, Supercars of London, when he bought his, he made a video early on where he couldn't put fuel in his car for that reason. And I put fuel in this in Scotland, I put fuel in this here, but I was just fiddling around with it and I couldn't open the filler a couple of weeks ago. I looked on the web, and the fix is just to bend this bit back on the cap so the pin doesn't have to retract as much. I think it just gets tired with time and can't retract far enough, but yeah, it's very frustrating. And there is an emergency release that's somewhere down here in the engine bay, but it's not easy to operate. Right, let's have a look at the front trunk, or as you Yanks call it, the frunk. I think that was penned from Porsche 911s, because it's been used well before this car was even dreamed of. Okay, big bonnet. So yeah, unlike a lot of cars, it seems to be painted all the way through. Look for these stickers, because that generally means it's original, but crucially as well, check for the bolts not being tampered with. So if there's paint missing, that bonnet has been off. On Porsches, it's really easy to pull this trim piece forward and have a good look at the panel, but it's not on these. This is very rigid, so you can't do that. What you really need to do, and it's not going to be practical on everybody's driveway, is to undo these screws and take these panels off, and then the whole ASF space frame is visible, and that is something we'll do in a bit, so bear with me. Right, let's have a look inside. While we're doing that, just check the door opens nicely, closes nicely. If doors drop or they're not aligned properly, they won't shut very easily, so that feels really nice. I've got my seat cover on here, but I'm sure you know this area is pretty crucial on cars like this, because people getting in and out of low cars can rub this away very quickly, so that's done pretty well actually. Again, carpets. I have to admit, I have cleaned this floor mat, but it's really good. There's a bit of wear there, but not excessive, not too kicked about. That's what I liked about this car, was that all these trim bits, which normally get kicked about, that's me that is trying to get out when it's on the ramp, they're all in really good condition. Pedal rubbers, so these are road, if it's done 100k this will be smooth, so the rubber actually will be smooth with the stainless steel, but they look right for the mileage. Checking for damp is never a bad idea, so just pop the carpet up, have a feel underneath, and just make sure it's dry. If you've got excessive condensation in the car, there's usually water somewhere. Right, let's have a look in the engine bay then. So this is probably specific to R8, most of this. Got to turn the ignition on. Take the key out. Okay, so it's on display, but it isn't sealed to the elements. It's actually designed to be open to allow the heat out, so that's why we've got this corrosion that I mentioned before. Water comes in from here. and they got rid of this on the Mark II. All this is plastic, or if you pay for carbon, it's carbon, but there is no metal trim now on the engine bay of the Mark II R8, probably because of this problem. So really, you need to take these panels off, which we'll do, I think, in a later episode, and have a good look under there. But again, here we've got stickers, which is a good sign that it's original. Again, original rear number plates. So that's the oil filler, but that's the dipstick. So you need to check that when the engine's warm and it's been shut off for about a minute, I think a minute or two, and that's the only way you can check it. If you check it cold, it's not going to be high enough and you're going to put too much oil in, so that is what you do. So yeah, this engine bay is far from perfect. There's a bit of corrosion there and there, but it should tidy up really easily. I can't wait to dress all this plastic and stuff and make it nice and shiny, but all in good time. Now let's do the bit I've been looking forward to and get the covers off the front end of the R8 and have a look at the ASF, the aluminium space frame. Okay guys, we've got the trim covers off the front of Project R8, so now we can have a good look at the ASF, the aluminium space frame. It's really important you do that, because if you've seen the videos by a guy called SAMCRAC in America where he bought a Totaled R8, you'll find that it's quite likely that early cars, much earlier than this one, are very vulnerable to cracking their chassis by the bulkhead. So we'll have a look at that area in a second. Before we do that, we'll just have a look at the front of the car, because like any car, it's vulnerable to accident damage. And it's always a good idea to familiarise yourself with what they should look like. Now, I'm no expert on R8s, but I can tell originality, and this looks spot on to me. It's nice and dirty, but nothing looks like it's been messed with in the 5 years the car's been on the road. So the car's Suzuka grey, but this structure is all in like a primer colour, a bit like Nardo grey, dare I say it. And all these bolts are untouched. It looks lovely. Yes, there's a bit of corrosion here and there, but when I take the bumper off, I can replace all these bolts. The actual structure, the important bit, looks lovely. So we've taken these trim bits off, took about 5 minutes, really easy. We haven't taken this one off because it's much harder, so it's not the kind of thing an owner would let you do, because it clips into the windscreen. You don't want to break a windscreen. You've got to take the wiper arms off, which is a pain. You've got to take the struts off that hold the bonnet up, so that's a bit too much. But the good news is, undo these 6 bolts and you can have a look at the area that you need to look at. This is a bit where SAMCRAC had his problems. So what I'm going to do is use this light to wedge up that cover a bit. Actually, before we do that, this bar in front of us here was cracked on SAMCRAC's car up the top there, probably where the loom goes in. So on this car it's absolutely perfect. And then the other worrying bit was where it cracked on the bulkhead as well. So let's have a look under there to try and get the light in place. I don't know if you can see, there's a bolt there that holds probably the strut on. There's a smudge of sealer over the area as well. All looks lovely and original. So that's good. So that's the suspension strut there, that round, sort of slightly corroded piece of aluminium that comes up from the hub, which is down there. So yeah, it's really nice. Got stickers in place here and here, which is also a good sign. What's quite funny about these is that this boot area seems to be like a plastic bucket with a flock lining that's just bolted into place, or even bonded into place. That's remarkable, but makes a lot of sense. Okay, we'll better check this side as well. So same principle applies. Check this longitudinal member and it looks good. And then up there you can see that bolt that holds the strut in place. On this side though, you've got the wiper linkage bolted over the bit that cracked on SAMCRAC's car. Maybe it reinforces it, you never know. But yeah, hopefully this later car will be rock solid. Now this example didn't live in the garage, I think, when it was in Scotland, even though the guy showed it to me in the garage. I think it lived outside most of the time. and it's covered with all this like tree debris, which I will clean off in time, but it seems to be lovely and original. In fact, one of the few things that he did go wrong with it was that the bonnet release needed adjusting a couple of times by Audi. But yeah, all looks really good. Okay guys, so we've had a good look at the top of Project R8. In the next episode, we'll get it into the workshop and lift it up in the air and have a good look at the underside. It should be really interesting to see how it all hangs together, and I'm really looking forward to doing that and just giving it a thorough check over. It will take quite a long time to do that, but I think with a car like this, it's really worth doing, because if you catch something early, it will save you money in the long run, because it could develop into a much more expensive fault. For example, if there's an oil leak, if that's ignored and becomes a bigger oil leak, well, you could end up having to buy an engine. So it's definitely a good thing to do. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this Volkswizard video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe, please comment, please share, and I'll see you for another episode of Project R8 really soon.